Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Searching the Sacred. We are in the midst of a really beautiful season here where we're talking about women that exist across multiple faith traditions and hearing from the different sacred texts of those traditions and the stories of those traditions to see how we can expand our ideas of who each of these women are and what the implications of their stories are for our lives today. And so today we are talking about Miriam, sister of Moses, and we're going to begin by hearing something about her from the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وحرمنا عليه المراضع من قبل فقالت هل أدلكم على أهل بيت يكفلونه لكم وهم له ناصحون. The translation goes, and she said to his sister, follow him. So she watched him from a distance while they did not see her.
Thank you. And now from the Christian tradition.
I will be reading from Exodus chapter 2, verses 5 through 9. Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river while her women servants walked along beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds, and she sent one of her servants to bring it to her. When she opened it, she saw the child. The boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. She said, "This must be one of the Hebrew children." Then the baby's sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Would you like me to go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, "Yes, do that." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll pay you for your work." So the woman took the child and nursed it.
And now from the Jewish tradition.
So I'm reading verses 20 and 21 in Exodus, or in Hebrew we call the book Shemot, chapter 15. And you'll hear, I'll chant the Hebrew, you'll hear at the end of the chanting a little bit of what we call the desert traveling melody, which is used for chanting parts of the Song of the Sea. Vatikach Miriam Haniviyah Achot Aharon et hatov biyadah ותצאנה כל הנשים אחריה בתופים ובמחולות ותען להם מרים שירו לאדוני כי גאל סוס ורוכבו רמה וים. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, picked up a hand drum, and all the women went out after her in dance with hand drums. And Miriam chanted for them, "Sing to Adonai, for God has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver God has hurled into the sea."
Well, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I read the wrong translation.
Oh, okay. Feel free to correct that now.
My bad. Okay, so I read the part of the sister in Arabic, and then the translation was what the mother said to the sister. So I need to read what the sister, what the Quran describes about the sister. So I need to read the Arabic version, and then I'm gonna read the translation.
Okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقالت لأخته قصيه فبصرت به عن جنب وهم لا يشعرون وحرمنا عليه المراضع من قبل فقالت هل أدلكم على أهل بيت يكفلونه لكم وهم له ناصحون. So the first verse was what the mother said to the sister, which I already read in English, and now the translation of the second one. And we have prevented him from all the wet nursing mother before. And then the sister Miriam said, "Shall I direct you to a household that will be able to take care of him? And they will be a good people to him. So they will be advising him as well." So that's the verse that relate to Miriam's Moses' sister.
Thank you. Well, and I think I'm excited to hear more from those we have gathered today about Miriam and how we see her. And we're going to begin by introducing ourselves. And before we do that, I want to give a caveat that hopefully I've given at every episode, but I'm not sure that I have. So hopefully I'm doing it when I remember, which is to remind our audience that we are here as people. We are not here as representatives of an entire faith tradition. So we get to wrestle and ask questions and wonder together. And there would be people from our own traditions that would likely disagree with something that we have to say. And there are people from our own traditions that would agree with what we have to say. And that's a part of having conversations like this, as we are a collection of humans who are having a conversation today. We might even disagree with what we have to say today on a future day when we believe something different. And all of that belongs when we are having this sort of multi-faith, multifaceted conversation. So as we introduce ourselves, I'm going to ask that you would please share your name, share the faith tradition that you are coming from, and if you have a role in that tradition that you would like us to know about. And then what, if anything, you grew up learning and hearing about this woman that we are talking about today. And going in the same order, let's start with Maria.
Well, my name is Maria Khani. I am a Muslim, originally from Syria. My title is a chaplain, and I'm a public speaker. The thing that I like about Miriam, Moses' sister, is how brave was to be young and to be able to go through that direction to the house of the Pharaoh and be able to talk and advise and give them good advice about her family so they can take back Moses to her house.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rachel.
My name is Rachel Pye Jones, and I am a Christian. I am currently a PhD student in intercultural studies with a focus on Islamic studies, and so that highlights my interest in these kinds of conversations. And then also my interest in interreligious conversations comes from having lived abroad for 20 years, where I was in Somaliland and Djibouti, and so immersed in a Muslim majority context, and was exposed to a whole bunch of different questions about characters that I discovered appear in both the Quran and the Bible, with some similarities and some differences. And so that is driving my interest and my love for these kinds of conversations. And when it comes to Miriam, I can't remember specific lessons, but she was just a wonderful example, I think, to me as a young girl. I agree with what Maria already shared of her courage and even her cleverness. Like, she was super smart and brave and bold and all these things that I didn't feel like I was brave or bold. And so I loved those aspects of her as a kid. And then seeing how she continued to walk through the wilderness with the Israelites and with her brother Moses and Aaron. I liked hearing about the sibling relationships that were happening there that felt complex. And also she felt fully fleshed out as a character because her story takes place over such a long period of time in the text. Yeah, so I'm interested in her. I've never really studied her, and so I'm excited about this.
Rabbi Tamar.
So I'm Tamar McGill Grimm. I am the senior rabbi at Beth Jacob Congregation in Mendota Heights, Minnesota, and I received my rabbinic ordination from the Rabbinical School of Hebrew College, which is located in Boston. My congregation is affiliated with the conservative movement, which means we have a relationship with Jewish law, understanding Jewish law as being binding, but also something that can develop and change over time. I don't remember learning much about Miriam when I was younger, and I'm not sure if that's just because we didn't get that far in my Torah classes. She came up a little bit during the Passover Seders. There's a tradition some people have of putting a Miriam's cup. We have like an Elijah's cup on the table during the Seder, and as people have kind of tried to bring more gender balance to their observance of the holiday, there's been a tradition of putting a Miriam's cup representing Miriam's connection with water and her wells in the desert. And then there's a famous song by a Jewish famous in Jewish circles, by a woman named Debbie Friedman, who wrote a beautiful song about Miriam related to the passage that I read, and her leading the people dancing and singing in timbrels. And it's a very beautiful, catchy song that I remember learning, early on in my memory.
Thank you.
I feel like at this point in the episodes, I'm even questioning what I remember. So
Look out for your name first.
I know. Gonna get this kicked off. I am Lisa Adams. I co-host this podcast, and I also co-lead 40 Orchards with Steph. And the other part of my job is I'm a chaplain who works with folks who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, and I'm hopeful that I bring their wisdom whenever I'm studying the text. I try to remember their voices. It's interesting because actually for some reason, this particular story pulls up a picture of a Bible that I had. Like it was like a story Bible for children that my parents would read to me when I was little. And there was a picture, and I remember the picture very vividly of this woven basket, and this Pharaoh's daughter was beautiful. Like I remember her being so striking. And I remember this little girl like hiding off to the side. So it's like this really vivid picture for me, and that's what I remember of her. I don't recall any stories beyond that action. I don't feel like I ever studied her getting leprosy. I was 40 something when I learned she was a prophetess, even though it's in the text. It just never hit the radar. And so, yeah, like the beginning is what I have a picture of, but that's about it. Mm-hmm.
I'm Stephanie, and I co-lead with Lisa, and used to be in a church context as a pastor, and now find myself here with 40 Orchards, and also working as a leadership coach in other settings. But when I think about the story of Miriam growing up, I just think again of a story that just wasn't told very often. I remember hearing stories of Moses, but I kind of feel like Miriam was the side character in the story of Moses and would appear when it made sense to talk about Moses. But I don't remember ever having her being highlighted or central. She was always sort of that picture in that children's Bible of her standing off to the side. That's how I pictured her whole narrative, was standing off to the side while Moses did his thing. And I think that's something that has really expanded as I have grown older, looked at the text more, studied different things around the text. And I would love to have that be the starting point of our conversation of how we might expand beyond what we just read. What are things from our tradition or things that we've been exposed to that we might now think of Miriam a little bit more or a little differently based on these other things than what we started reading with. So what comes to mind? I might pick on Rabbi Tamar because one of the things that I was exposed to that has helped me is the tradition of having Miriam's connection to wells and to being a part of the wells that are in the wilderness. So I wonder if you could share a little bit more about that tradition with us. Oh, you are muted, Rabbi Tamar.
Sorry. It stems from a passage about her in Numbers when she dies, right? So if you, I don't think any of us read this. If you look at chapter 20 of the book of Numbers, in Hebrew we call it Bamidbar, which means in the desert. The Israelites arrive to the wilderness of Sin, and Miriam dies. And the next verse says, the community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron, right? And this is the whole hitting the rock story. But the question is, why is the community suddenly without water? And one of the rabbinic interpretations of this is that, well, they're without water because Miriam knew Miriam was the one who found the wells, right? And so she's connected with water that way. There's a little bit more to it. The Talmud sort of fleshes this out a little and says that there were 3 gifts that the Jews, the Israelites, had in the desert. They had a well of water, they had a pillar of cloud, and they received manna, right? And that each of those 3 things is connected to the 3 siblings: Miriam to the water, Aaron to the pillar of cloud, and manna to Moses.
Interesting.
Was there more to it that you had learned, or I'm just curious what you
the only addition I heard from there was this question of whether there was a song that she would sing for the wells, and the people didn't know the song and had to learn the song, I think in Numbers 23. And they hadn't yet learned Miriam's song, so they weren't able to yet get water, was the only other. Is that right?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Okay.
Is that in the text that she, like the song? I would love to read that in Numbers about the song. Or did she find wells previously, or is the water connection because of when she dropped with Moses at the river when he was a baby?
I feel like Rabbi Tamar is looking something up, so I'm going to talk for a minute while she's looking this up. But I think it stems from the tradition of reading something like they didn't have water in Numbers 20, and the rabbis responding to that with a question and writing about it. Why didn't they have water? And then becomes a part of the other texts that are like the midrash about it, but they're because of the question they're asking. But then that ties in other passages as they are looking at the answers to that question of, Miriam was at the water with Moses, and Miriam was also at the water when they crossed the sea, and then they don't have water when she dies. What was Miriam's connection to water that leads to interpretation of that? Rabbi Tamar, looks like you're looking something up.
Yeah, I think it's in Numbers 21:15. And did they get this from? Sorry, this is the only thing about being on the computer and not having books in front of me. But so yeah, I think they're deriving it from Numbers 21:15. That the well which God said to Moses, gather the people and I will give them water. Then Israel sings this song, ascend, O well, sing to it, a well dug by princes, carved out by nobles of the people, through the lawgiver with their staffs, and from the desert a gift, from the gift to the streams, from the streams to the heights, from the heights to the valley, in the field of Moab, at the top of the peak that overlooks the wastelands. And the sages explained that the well in this song is Miriam's well, and was sung on account of a miracle that happened at the well, or with the well.
Maria, I'm curious, as we talked before we pressed record, you said, well, I only have a verse to choose from. There's not a lot in the Quran. So I'm curious about your relationship with this character of Miriam, who is not a large character in the narrative.
Yeah, it's only one verse and in only one chapter. I wish we had more, but probably that's what we need. And from this simple verse, I can share a few things about her that it did connect me to her when I was a kid. I had a teddy bear, if I can share that story with you guys. I had a teddy bear who I still have. My teddy bear goes with me everywhere I go. I wanted to, for whatever reason, I was 8 years old when I decided to do a game with myself, play a game, put my teddy bear in my tricycle that I had. It was a raining day, and I wanted to feel how Miriam had the feeling when she was looking for her brother. So I pushed my tricycle into under the rain with my teddy bear, and I was thinking about Miriam trying to find her brother in the basket, and I was crying. I remember that day well. I was crying, and the teddy bear was in front of me, but I wanted to feel exactly how she felt, trying to look for her brother. As much as I was comfortable sitting in my parents' house and on the balcony, I felt like she probably was so scared to go all the way to look for her brother in a community where they did not respect the Israelite and they enslaved them. So she was so brave. Even your mom told her to go and look for her brother. But being young and being able to go by herself made me realize like how strong this girl was. And I don't remember thinking that she was an adult. I thought that she was a kid just like me. And I don't know, maybe Rabbi Tamara can tell me exactly if they have an age for Miriam back then when she looked for her brother. But for me, it was a kid looking for her baby brother. It was a scary moment, but she was so brave to go there and speak to those people. Little girl talking to those people in front of Pharaoh and the tribe and everybody else and telling them that the baby's crying and you can't feed the baby, but I have a family who can take care of that baby. That made a big impact on my life. And I felt like I need to be brave as she was brave. And I think the lesson I learned, I still have those moments for the rest of my life. I keep them in my heart. With this simple verse that I have about her, I think the impact was amazing, a huge impact in my life to be brave and be able to speak even if you are a kid. And, you know, if you're doing the right thing, you need to speak up. Doesn't matter.
What a story of being young and wanting to know the feeling of a character in the sacred text. That's a very
Moses was a very dear person to me when I was a kid. Yes. So I try to just think and feel her feeling. I don't know why I did it, but I did it.
I'm so glad you did. Well, at least for one reason, you got to share it here with us today. I'm thinking my entire life, if I ever worked that hard to feel the feelings of any of the characters in the Bible, and I don't know that I ever have. And that's just a beautiful way to sit with the text, is to try to feel alongside.
Yeah, I love that. And Maria, can you clarify for me? It sounds like she, in the Quran verse, she goes to Pharaoh's house. Is that where she ends up talking? Or
it doesn't say house, but she was talking to them. She was talking to them, probably in the house or probably when they picked him up. It doesn't say, the verse does not say, but it says that she talked to them. She talked to them and she directed them to her mom. She said, I have a house who can take care of him. Yeah. So and definitely she was talking.
She's talking to Pharaoh as well, not just to Pharaoh's daughter.
We don't have Pharaoh's daughter in the text. We have Pharaoh and Pharaoh's wife. So she was talking to probably Pharaoh's wife, Pharaoh himself, whoever was there. But the way the Quran described it, that she was talking to a group of people, and definitely she was talking to Pharaoh's wife and Pharaoh himself, probably.
I love that idea of it being a group of people. I think that's something that definitely has expanded for me as I've looked at this story more as an adult, is to say that is a brave.
Oh yeah,
that is a brave sister to speak up to such power on behalf of her brother. Really different than the sidelined character that I thought about or was exposed to when I was younger. Rabbi Tamar, you looked like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's even more dramatic if it's Pharaoh's wife and Pharaoh himself than if it's his daughter, as it is in the Torah, right? Like, I don't know, for some reason, if it's the daughter, it seems more approachable to me. And so I'm just drawn to the version in the Quran also, like, as a way of like really emphasizing her strength and courage. And it sort of explains also why she's considered a prophet, why she's called a prophet in the section I read, and she has her own following, right, of women who follow her. You know, presumably her leading them in song after the splitting of the sea is not the first time that they've, I don't know, it's hard to know. Maybe it is they've gathered in that way, but it seems like she has a following.
Well, I'm a follower.
I think we might all be Miriam fans in this conversation, fans and followers of this strong, courageous, prophetic woman existing very early in the narrative in all of our traditions. And the length of her story is different, but her character seems to have some similarities across the different traditions of.
Does the Torah say anything about her age? Like how, like, was she young?
I don't think the Torah itself does. There's probably something somewhere in the oral tradition about it, but I don't know off the top of my head.
My imagination says she must have been young because her mother is still birthing more children. And so she couldn't, I mean, I suppose she could have been have an age expanse between Miriam and Moses. In my mind, she's always been about 7 or 8, but that's just me making it up. But one of the things I love about that idea of her being a child is how many times have I just been asking God, why didn't you tell us more about the childhood of these people? Like, what about Jesus's childhood? What about Abraham's childhood? And we don't get that idea. But with Miriam, I'm just struck right now as we're talking that we get some of her child behavior that probably speaks to her formation as the prophetess that she becomes and the leader that she becomes. And so many of the characters we have in our scripture just sort of drop in as adults or as children and then disappear. But we have her story from childhood to death. We have Moses' story too, from birth to death. But I don't know if there's that many characters that we follow where we can kind of think about how was this experience formative for her in her future interactions with the Israelites or with other people they interacted with. I love that about her. That's just right now happening in my spirit.
Well, good. We have some right now revelations are good in these conversations.
And she's, her mother puts him in this basket and sends him off down the Nile. And this text in the Torah says she stations herself at a distance to learn what would befall him. And it's interesting that she's the one doing that, not the mother.
I wonder if she was less threatening as a child.
She was what?
Less threatening because Pharaoh was trying to eliminate.
Yeah.
Well, it also reminds me just of, as you talk about the formative experience of her growing up, Rachel, thinking about she's growing up in the era of Pharaoh killing babies at that same river where she's taking a stand and stationing herself. And it makes me think of how any of us respond to trauma when we're young, and that she's someone who from a young age is rising up and saying there has to be life that can come from this river, not death. And I will protect the baby boy that is in my family. I will protect him in this river. And I think of like the children who fight back with parents who are mistreating them, or who fight back against teachers who've been unfair to somebody in the class. And that there are humans who have that sense of, this isn't okay. Something more has to come from here. And to wonder about a female character who might have that energy of seeking something more from a place that has been a place of death for her people, even if she is only 7 or 8. Or older. Again, we don't know. Maybe she's older, but she's probably not super old.
It's interesting also to know that you said that it wasn't the mother who went to look for Moses. She sent her to look for him.
Well, she went. It doesn't say she sent her. It just says that
in the Quran. In the Quran, she sent her. That means the mother trusts the judgment of this young girl, that she's not gonna make a mistake. She's not gonna say, oh, he's my brother. Oh, he's from the Israelite. She's not gonna say any of this stuff. So that means this girl is really young, but at the same time, she's wise and she knows what to say and what not to say. And that also a good character for us to explore and think about how amazing Miriam was.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. I think it's interesting because, we get later in the Torah, we get a different perspective on her, right? She and Aaron, she gets punished for bad mouthing her brother. She and Aaron are so Moshe or Moses marries a woman, and Miriam and Aaron are saying bad things about her and where she's from, and God strikes her with leprosy as a punishment for speaking ill of Moshe's wife. Then Moshe pleads for her healing, asks God to heal her, and she is healed. We get a little more of a complex version of her.
In that story, Rabbi Tamar, does Aaron also have a punishment? I don't remember, and I didn't read it. I should have read it before this call.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just her that receives that punishment of leprosy.
I believe that is true, Rachel, and
there's some interesting gendering things in my limited knowledge of Hebrew. Preface it with that she is the one that is voicing the complaint. Like Aaron is with her, but is not voicing it. She is the voice of the complaint, and she is the one that then is. My assumption is that is how she is given this punishment, and Aaron is not. Mm-hmm. But both brothers are trying to figure out how to engage with that. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about. I think there's a communal question or a communal noticing in the story, because I think it's interesting. We've all, in the previous conversation around Pharaoh's daughter / wife, whichever character in our traditions, she's elevated. And so there's also something to be said for someone who can recognize a child and like in lots of ways affirm them and affirm what they're doing. And I think about my immediate response to like children doing dangerous things of like, don't do that. I don't know that I would send a young child to the river to watch. I feel like I would be very nervous about that, even in and so like I was just thinking about like her response and like how the community responds to Miriam as a child, but it also speaks that like in the moment of her getting leprosy, that the community doesn't move without her. They wait for her to come out of that. And so there is something communal in Miriam's story of like how the community responds to her consistently, even if she is done something that might be punishable, that the community is still with her and for her. And I think it's like that reciprocity of seeing someone who has fought for folks and on behalf of others, that then people return and reciprocate. That is somehow like kind of like I think I'm just noticing a bookend of community in different ways.
There's a kind of communal redemption to it. It feels like in that sense of them waiting for her, and that they needed her to be part of them because of what you just said, of recognizing what she has done, or maybe for other reasons as well. But
she's their source of water. But
okay.
Depends how much benefit of the doubt we're giving them for why it matters. That reminds me of like family systems things of sometimes people want the mom around because of feelings, and sometimes it's because of food. That Miriam perhaps has that energy, whether it's because of water or goodwill. There is this communal dependence, perhaps, that we could say on her and what she is offering, and that is then reflected on how people are responding to her and following her in the Exodus 15 narrative of her singing, and that they're singing with her and celebrating with her about what has happened. I'm curious to go back to that Exodus 15 part for a bit and talk about the word prophetess that's assigned to her there, and that's rather unique for a female in the text, especially. But even it's just not a title that's thrown around very much. And I'm curious about what you would want us to know about that, Rabbi Tamar. And I'm also curious, Lisa, for you to share more of your story of why that was impactful to you, because you mentioned that in the beginning, and to be able to return to that.
One quick question.
Yes.
Is she the only female prophet?
Well, good addition to my question.
Isn't Deborah also, isn't that term also applied to her?
Yes, I believe Deborah is also named as a prophet in the book of Judges.
And Huldah, right?
And Huldah in 2 Kings 22. Well done. Good group effort.
Are there any female prophets, Maria, in the Quran? Mary maybe is the close. No, okay.
No. I mean, she probably has all the character of a prophet, but she was not named as a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know any midrashim about it. I haven't like heard, so I don't have anything on the tip of my tongue to bring in terms of a more expanded interpretation of it. But I think the idea that word would be applied to her certainly conveys a sense that she has a unique relationship with people, and a unique relationship with God, right? Like we've talked about her relationship with the community and their sense of dependence on her, whether for actual sustenance or spiritual sustenance. But I think that there's also a sense that she has a relationship with God. Kind of going back to this moment when she gets stricken with leprosy, God speaks to Aaron and Miriam and says to them, with other prophets, I speak in dreams, or in illusions, and Moses is the only person that I speak with face to face, and that's kind of that's a rebuke of them that God gives to Aaron and Miriam. But meanwhile, God is talking to Aaron and Miriam. So Aaron has a very specific, role in bringing God's presence close to the people. And Moses has a different role, right? Moses is conveying God's will to the people, and Aaron is trying to bring God's presence into the community of the people through his work as a priest. With Miriam, we're not exactly sure. Like, we don't really know what is it about her that makes her a prophet. It doesn't really say. It's just there, but clearly there's something there.
Mm-hmm. So a title with some mystery, which perhaps also makes it a little bit unique of all the room that there is to interpret that and wonder about that. Lisa, what was impactful about that to you when you heard her being called a prophetess?
Oh, I think it's interesting that that's one of the first usages of prophet in the text. I think that is fascinating. And I'm always looking for a female narrative or a female story in the text. Like, that's just, I spent so many years not. so now it becomes the lens with which I'm trying to like view things. And I love the idea that, because I get Moses is a big deal. Like, deserves his place in history. And he certainly didn't do it alone. Like, and there's a way that elevating Miriam helps me see the other players, and it expands like how I see this community operating. It's a large number of people. And so it makes total sense to me that there would be a female, like, of course, there's a woman doing this. So like, I think it's just exciting when I find those stories. And the same thing happens like when I stop and study a Deborah or a Huldah, or like there's different stories underneath that I find rich. And I think that because women don't have a ton of narrative, it also leaves a lot of space to be creative and to like insert myself in there. like I get to play in the story a little bit better because it's not so descriptive of all the things. So like I can there's a particular way of thinking about a woman leading other women that feels like a space that I can go, oh yeah. And in the same way of like, of course she gets punished and Aaron doesn't. Of course. Like there's a little bit of like that. Like it feels like, oh yeah, I can see my story there. I don't know. Like that's the part that's I rather like her. And again, my name is out of the tradition. Like my middle name is Marie, which is out of Mary and Miriam. And so I've spent some time sitting with her, and I think that a woman who bears a name that has things like bitter and rebellion inside of it, how those things actually like play out and work. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you have bitter and rebellion, those can be things used for good and things that aren't.
As we think about, I think the name is interesting to key in on, because Maria, does she have a name in the Quran, or is she just named as Moses' sister?
Moses' sister. Only the Virgin Mary comes in the Quran by name.
Okay.
That's interesting, because I've met a number of people from the Muslim tradition who are named Miriam. Is that based on something else, or
no? Miriam is the Virgin Mary in Arabic,
the mother of Jesus.
Yeah, the mother of Jesus, Miriam.
Yes, that was an interesting. We'll just plug that podcast for a moment. It was I did not know that she was so elevated in the Muslim tradition until the conversation we recorded around her, and that was new to me. I did not know there were that Miriam was a common name and that she was elevated, and so. There's another episode on another Miriam that everyone can listen to. Today we're talking about this Miriam in the book of Exodus. I'm curious, Maria, how you had that such a personal story about putting your teddy bear in this tricycle. I'm curious how you would describe how that impacted how you have lived since then. What do you think that did to affect how you live out your faith, that you were so compelled to act like Miriam in that moment?
It brings back the feelings of that day. I can see it. It's a raining day. It did make me feel that in a sad moment in life, or a critical moment in my life, I have to keep one thing in mind, that I need to be strong and move forward, regardless of sad moment or challenging moment. And I think all my life I was that girl who always faced the challenges. For maybe that was the time that was shifted completely my life. It was a different direction that I took at early age, which I am sometimes when I think about it, I remember I gave a presentation about that day in a Mormon church, and the impact of that moment changed my life completely as a child. To think about, like, you want to go through experience to feel how Miriam felt. Again, it was a moment of sadness. I had tears. I was crying, seeing my teddy bear getting wet, but I wanted to feel exactly. And regardless of my feeling, I had to be strong. I didn't do anything that day. There's nothing to do, but it made me realize that I need to be strong, even in the weakness, even in the time when I'm so, the environment that I am, or the situation that I am facing, it puts me in a very awkward, weak, sad, challenge situation, that I need to be strong. I have to be strong no matter what. I have to be strong. I have to be brave.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm curious for the rest of us if any, maybe not such a specific story, but I wonder if there's ways that we can see that we have followed Miriam's example in some way and been influenced by how she led, or influenced by how she spoke, or influenced by what she did. because that's something that now Lisa and Maria have both brought up in different ways. I wonder about Rabbi Tamar and Rachel. Are there ways you feel like you've followed her example or been influenced by her story?
I like her example of leading the people in worship after they cross the dry land when the Red Sea parts. And I think that is something that I've tried to do. I'm working on doing it even more, but marking moments in time or experience that necessitate or somehow they're weighty enough to merit as a celebratory action or moment. And I want to be better about that. And so, but that is something that we have tried to do over the years, especially abroad, marking, 5 years in this new country or a language successful test exam, passing some milestone, and celebrating those things. So I like that she did that in terms of her leadership. I also, on the negative side, in terms of her rebuke or conflict that she ran into, her and Aaron with Moses about his wife. And there's also some phrases in that passage about, doesn't God speak to us too? There seems to be a little bit of envy, or I don't know exactly what she would have been feeling, but I can relate to that as well. Like I want to be close. I want to be that close to God too, and so recognizing some of that in my spirit is something that I see in her story.
I'm thinking about three aspects of Miriam that I can't say that I've had her in mind in the way that I serve, but when I think about these three aspects of her story, they are intentions that I put forward in my leadership. And so the first is when she stands by the river to see what will happen with her brother, sort of the stance that I try to take in pastoral care of accompaniment and witnessing and being present for how things will unfold for someone rather than trying to push them towards one direction or another, but kind of being alongside. The second is as Rachel just said, in her celebrating with the people and looking for the moments that we can, where we can acknowledge and appreciate the goodness in our lives. And the third being providing for both. We talked about her as being the one who knew how to find the water and making sure people had water to drink, but also, some kind of that they relied on her for spiritual needs. And I think I, in my work as a rabbi, I like to make sure people are fed, but I also like to make sure that their spirits are nourished as well.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the there's a shirt like fight racism, love well, drink water. Like that there is a sense where it all belongs together, and that the physical care of people does belong with fighting for justice, does belong with the spiritual care, and is a part of it. You need to drink water, and we have access to it, and we sometimes forget how important that is to have those physical needs met as we keep moving through our life and our world. Well, we end our conversations with some sense of a takeaway, and so that is not necessarily one interpretation of a passage, because there's always multiple interpretations of passages and conversations, but more of a sense of if our listeners are moving on quickly to something else, a way for them to have a nugget of some sort to hold on to. And so this can be something that one of us wants to remember or think about or do, but it could also be something that we would want the listeners to remember or think about or do from our conversation. So as you kind of filter through all the things that we have said about Miriam, what is a nugget you would want to be on people's minds as they leave this episode with us, or that you want on your mind as you leave this episode with us?
I can with the only verse that we have in the Quran about Miriam, I am interested in reading more from the Torah about Miriam to get to know more about her. And I was wondering, like, after she was hit by the leprosy, did she do anything? Like, she repented or asked forgiveness, or how does it goes from after that? Like, I'm interested in knowing what happened after that. And I would like to read it and see, like, is she okay? Is she good?
She is okay. That is, I'll give that spoiler. That happens several chapters before she actually passes away. So there seems to be a recovery of sorts from.
Yeah, there's a connection with her, so I need to know that she's okay.
One thing I'm thinking about, we didn't even talk about this, I guess, but her in the story with Moses and the Israelites in the desert makes me think about what that whole journey, all those years would have been like for a woman, which feels like it probably was very different to what all those years would have been like for a man. We kind of talked about that a little bit, I think, in our conversation of Noah's wife as well. Like, just the fact that she's in this story means I need to think about this. Had 40 years. I mean, women are giving birth. They're doing all kinds of things. They're having their periods on this journey. That's a big deal for a woman, different from a man. And so I want to take away thinking about that. I'm also just really struck by, going back to my comment on celebrating things, like when they fled Egypt, she brought a tambourine with her, or a hand drum. What? When they're in the middle of this big event, she thought to bring that's really striking, and it actually kind of gave me tingles right now of what do I want to bring with me in order to celebrate in the middle of something both traumatic and exciting, and what do I want to bring with me?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Good spirit.
I kind of want to read the lyrics to Debbie Friedman's song about her. They're really beautiful. So I guess it's not exactly my own takeaway, but
how about we do this? How about we make our way around to Lisa and then to me, and then you close us with that. That sounds like a great way to close the episode if she's got good lyrics for all of us. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think I'm remembering that, like, this is also part of the reason I think I like this story, is that I think I sit with a lot of women who are cast out, who are put outside of the community, which is a little bit of what happens with Miriam and the leprosy, that there's a particular way she is outside of community. And so there's something about all the different skills that Miriam has gained over time that I think serves her well in that space. And I'm hopeful that the things, like my lived experiences, like my life, also suits me for spending time with folks who are outside of they're still a part of our community. Like, I think that's the thing that's so important for me. And I think what I just wish everybody would remember is that the folks who are behind bars are still part of our communities, even though they are currently put into different space. So, like, all of that, I don't have really a wrestle. I just really like her. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm currently now I'm really enamored with the idea that she brought a tambourine with her out of Egypt. So I'm going to steal Rachel's, because that's amazing. Because we just recorded another episode about the idea of fleeing and what you take with you when you flee. And that is a fascinating thing to think about, her taking a tambourine. But I've also often thought of her. I think I love her. I have this feeling of what it is to. Sometimes in the Christian tradition, people look for a leader to follow from the text. And I feel like people often look to Moses when they're in the book of Exodus, because he's so central and he's so large of a looming character. But I think most of us will not play that kind of role in our lives. But Miriam is also a large character. And I think, but is also maybe a little bit more relatable in certain ways, even though she's a large character, because she's not the central figure, but she is an influential figure. And I think of her following, like, what it is to follow that example of being important, but not necessarily center, and how you still find ways to be a prophet and to play a role of provision and all of these things that she did. And what it is to see ourselves in her and to follow her example. So let's close with Rabbi Tamar's words from, what is the name of the artist again? Debbie Friedman?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're not my words, they're her words.
So take these as our close to the episode, listeners.
Zichronah livracha, she died a few years ago. Okay. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced all night long. I don't know why it's getting to me. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every strand and every thread, she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances toward the light. When Miriam stood upon the shores and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her, just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song. She sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle. We're going to dance tonight.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a 40 Orchards podcast. At 40 Orchards, our mission is to create circles for all people to wrestle through biblical text so that together we can expand each other's experience of what is sacred, whole, and good. We search through the lens of sacred possibility, assuming there is more to be discovered, questioned, and applied as we listen for how God is still speaking. You can learn more about 40 Orchards and sign up for a study by going to 40, that's 40orchards.org. Our opening music is by Les FM. Our closing music is by NCR Music Vibes. Additional music is by 3 Music. Any references to books or other sources can be found in the show notes of this episode. Thank you for searching the sacred.